Welcome everyone. My name is Darren. Thank you for taking your time off from your busy schedule and coming for this ISS webinar session on the OKP scholarship for 2023. There were a lot of problems with information of the OKP this year, but we finally received some good information last week. So now we are ready, and hopefully we will receive a lot of students this year at ISS. Now, without further ado, I will pass on the floor to, well, before that, I would like to introduce everyone, the guest speakers that are here. Firstly, we have Rika Blau. She is the Senior Policy Advisor at ISS. We are also have Els Veldman. She's the Admission Officer at ISS. And we have two students, Chidibire from Nigeria, who is an OKP awardee. She is currently doing the Governance, Migration and Diversity track at ISS. And we have Iliana Melham from Lebanon, who is currently doing the SPD major at ISS. Now, without further ado, I would like to invite Vika to continue to give the presentation about the OKP scholarship.
Thank you, Darren, and welcome to everyone to this webinar dedicated to the Orange Knowledge Program. It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon in the Netherlands. It might be early in the morning for you or late in the evening, but we are happy to have you here at the webinar. I will start with a short introduction of the program and an explanation of the application procedure. And after that, Els and Chidibere and Eliana will introduce themselves, and then we have ample time for questions and answers. So please make use of the chat function. We might answer some quick questions from you during the presentation, but we will have time after the presentations to discuss all the questions that you raise. So I will give an introduction to the Orange Knowledge application procedure. I will focus on the eligibility, on the motivation, and talk you through the various steps to apply for an Orange Knowledge Program scholarship. So the OKP application procedure. The first step you have to take is to apply to the ISS program. On the ISS website, you will find a description of our Master in Development Studies and various majors for which you have to subscribe. There's a separate application procedure for the to apply for the MA in Development Studies. And after you are accepted by the selection board and you are eligible for an OKP scholarship, the admission office will provide you with a link to the OKP scholarship program. So the application deadline at ISS is the 13th of February to be able to eligible for this for the OKP scholarship, and you can apply in the OKP scholarship link between the 9th of February and 16th of March. However, we would like to urge you to do this as soon as possible and to start preparation in time, because we know there are various steps to take, and the more time we have to go through the applications, the better we can help you and support you in a good application. ISS will do then a first check on eligibility, whether you submitted the right employer statement, whether the motivation came through, and whether there's a good copy of your passport. And then we are allowed to nominate candidates to the NAVIC for an OKP scholarship. The next step is that the Dutch embassies in the various countries are also making their selection and nominate candidates for the OKP scholarship. And then the decision on the allocation of the scholarships will be announced after the 8th of June by the ISS. I would like to stress that you can submit only one application. So there is one procedure for the OKP scholarship program for the whole of the Netherlands. So if you are in doubt whether you want to study at ISS or whether you want to do a similar program at, for example, the University of Amsterdam, please make up your mind and ensure that you submit only one application, because all applications in the Netherlands go into one system. So they will see your two applications in the system, and that means automatically that you will not be eligible for an OKP scholarship. Another warning I would like to give or a question is to check your spam box, because sometimes our emails end up in spam boxes of people. So let me now focus on the eligibility and the nomination. First of all, the OKP scholarship is available for people for candidates from 30 countries. You will get a list of the countries in a minute. Let me now first focus on the eligibility. The first check that we will do is whether your application is complete, whether it's a valid application, and whether you meet all the requirements for the program. It means that you are from one of the eligible countries, and that you are not employed by an organization with own means for staff development, and that means larger international organizations, then you are not eligible for an OKP scholarship. We also check whether you have uploaded a valid passport, and whether there's a government statement if needed, and whether all the other documents are available. So we nominate candidates to the NAVIC for the scholarship. To give you a sense of the number of applications we receive, normally we have around 250 valid applications of people whom we can nominate for a scholarship. And out of those 250 people, we can nominate around 140 people for a scholarship. So we have a bit of an idea of your chances. When we are nominating candidates, we are looking at an even spread over the countries for which you are eligible. We also look at the priorities of the program. And we look at the coherence of your motivation and your employment statement. Darren, can you show the OKP country list maybe? Right, well, you have time to check whether your country is on the list. A few countries are not eligible anymore, so please check. But you can also find this list on the ISS website, and we will share the PowerPoint with you afterwards. So let me now focus on the employer statement. There is a format for the employer statement on our website available. And an important part of the employer statement is the action plan. And when preparing the action plan, you should keep in mind that the purpose of the OKP program is capacity building. So the action plan should show how your organization will benefit from the knowledge you obtain when you're studying in the master program at ISS. And it has to be concrete on the various steps you want to take once you return to your country and to your employer. It's also important in the employer statement that the employer is committed to continue to pay your salary for the whole period. It's also important that it's a statement of the current employer, and you might want to check with your employer who should sign the employer statement, whether it's your direct chief, or whether it's the head of a department, or whether it's the director of the employer, the director of the organization. And it's important to note that the employer should be accessible for the Dutch embassy, because once we've nominated the candidates, the Dutch embassies, very likely most of the embassies are contacting the employer either by phone or by email to check whether they indeed are nominating you as a candidate for an Orange Knowledge Scholarship. So please inform your employer that they should keep themselves available for contact by the Dutch embassy. The other official document is a government statement. That is a requirement by the country and is basically a permission to go abroad by your own government. In the list, the country list, you can check whether for your country a government statement is needed. And if you are in doubt where to get this government statement or how it should look like, please contact the admission office, because we have experienced how these government statements look like and whom should sign them for the various countries. So let me now focus on your motivation, which is a very important part of your application. like I've said before, the purpose of the OKP is capacity building, and it's important to keep that in mind. What is also important to be aware of is the priority areas of the Dutch government in this OKP program. And there are 4 main priority areas, which are the food security, rule of law, water, and sexual and reproductive health and rights. Also, we noted that gender and human rights are considered key areas by the Dutch embassies. You also have to check boxes in your applications in which priority areas of the Dutch government your application or your employer is. When you're preparing your motivation, it's important to check the priorities of the Dutch embassy in your country, specifically of the OKP program. So every Dutch embassy has on their website an explanation on which priority areas they consider as the most important for their country. There are often 2 or 3 priority areas out of the ones that I just mentioned. When you're preparing your motivation, it's important to be aware of the jargon or the way the Dutch embassies are phrasing the priority areas, and to use the same words, because that rings a bell or ticks a box with the fellowship officers at the Dutch embassies. So, for example, if you're working in an anti-corruption department, make sure that you mention rule of law. If you're working with children, make sure you mention child rights or human rights. Also important is to be realistic in your ambitions for your country. You should be aware of your current position and what you can, what your objectives are within the abilities of your current position. Also important to prepare your motivation in advance and to make sure that the employer statement and your action plan are in line with your own motivation. And please prepare your motivation in advance and cut and paste them into your application later on. So this is a lot of information, I understand, and please do ask your questions in the chat environment. And let me now, at the end of this presentation, give you once more the practical steps that you have to take and to prepare your motivation. So first of all, the OKP application portal opens on the 9th of February and closes on the 16th of March. I see that Darren is moving through the slides. To the next slide, please, Darren. Yeah. So the application portal opens from 9th of February till the 16th of March. Please apply as soon as you have the whole set of documents available. It's important to be aware that you have to apply, submit your proposal in one go. So please make sure that you prepare all documents, because you have only one step. You have to submit all the documents that are required. If something goes wrong or you forget, you're making a mistake or uploading the wrong documents, please note that the admission office and the back office can access your application. So if you have questions or doubts, please have to replace a document, please contact the admission office and ask them to replace it on your behalf. We also urge you to start with your preparations in time, especially of the employer statement and the government statement and the passport. We know that this can take some time, and you can start preparing those documents already while you're still working on your application, even for the ISS program. Also, we advise you to prepare the motivation in a Word document, something to make sure that you have that you stay within the maximum number of characters, and you can easily cut and paste your motivation into the system. I think this is all the information that I wanted to share with you. A lot of information, I understand, but if it raises questions, please do ask them in the chat environment. And now I would like to ask Els, the admission officer, to introduce herself and the work done by the admission office for the OKP procedure. Els, can I give the floor to you?
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Els Veldman and I work in the admission office, and I guess a lot of you have seen your name at the bottom of your admission letter. But of course, I don't do the work alone. I'm happy to have two other colleagues. It's Marianne van Dieren and the other colleague is Amina Said. So the three of us, we handle all things in the admission office. And basically at this moment in time, we are really busy processing all your applications, because still many applications come in and you still have time left to submit your application. So if you haven't done so, please do. We make sure that all your applications are complete and forward them to the Board of Admission. They decide on your application, taking into account everything, of course, and then you will receive your admission letter from us. Regarding the opening of the OKP program, we will send you in a couple of days a link, and through that link you can apply in the system for the OKP program. And the system is called Delta. And with the link, you can log in to Delta and then you will come into the application environment. So it's rather simple all. As Wieke has already stressed, you need to submit your application in one go. So please take care of that. Then once the application is submitted, we will make sure that all the documents are okay. And then later on, everything will be sent to the NUFIC and then to the embassies. And then after a very long wait, not only for you, but also for us here in the admission office, but also at ISS in general, we are eagerly awaiting the outcome of the OKP selection. So let us just hope for a good number of applicants. Other things that we do in the admission, of course, everything to do with your the administration before you come. So we make sure you get the right information. We make sure you get the official OKP award letter. We will definitely make sure that we apply for your visa. So that's not something that you would have to do. That's what we take care of. And of course, we have sufficient accommodation adjacent to the ISS building or in a few student hostels at easy distance from ISS. So I think that's basically what we do. And we are always advising people to contact us through email if you have any questions, because I'm sure you will have many questions or whatever on whatever subject. So please don't hesitate to contact us by email.
Thank you, Els, for your introduction. And may I now ask Kidibere from Nigeria to tell a bit about her background, her professional background, and how you prepared your application for OKP scholarship. Kidibere, please take the floor.
Thank you. My name is Chidebere and Uzowihi. I'm from Nigeria. I'm currently studying here at ISS, majoring in governance of migration and diversity. Before my journey to ISS, I was working in Nigeria as a travel consultant with a travel and tour agency in Nigeria. I've been working with this company since 2018. And while I was working, I was preparing to do my master's. So I was making applications for master's program and scholarship. But the scholarships I got were not fully funded until 2021 when I heard about OKP from a friend, and I equally heard about ISS from a friend who graduated from ISS and who got into the program through the OKP scholarship. So that was how I heard about the OKP scholarship, and I took interest in it. I went to the website, ISS website. I searched about programs they offered here in ISS, and I picked interest with the migration and governance of migration and diversity because it relates to what I was doing in Nigeria. It's has a link to travels, and I was into travel. So that was how I started my journey and application to ISS. For the motivation of preparation for the OKP, I started on time. That's the key thing to note. You have to start on time because the motivation letter has about 4 sections, which has 4 different questions, and you have to answer. So, and each of these questions is nothing less than 1,000 words, which you have to think about. And it has to border on what problem you intend to solve in your country, what you intend to do with the knowledge you will gain here from ISS, and how you intend to do this. So it's very important you start on time to prepare for your motivation letter. And one other thing you should also have in mind, or you should keep in mind, is the thematic focus of the Dutch embassy. So this is very important. They look out for these things, these themes, security and human rights, sexual reproductive rights, and food, water, and security, food, water, and food security. Yeah, these are some of the themes of the Dutch embassy, the thematic focus. So you have to put that into perspective. You have to put that into consideration when you're writing your motivation letter. Also check out the Dutch embassy in your country to know which one is specific to them, because each country is, these themes are country specific. So you have to look at the Dutch embassy in your country, their website, to know which of these themes are specific to your country. Another thing you should put in mind is, you're not an island. You can know, also it's important to have someone actually look through your motivation after you're done preparing it, read it out, ask people to read through, because it will be important. It is actually important to have someone edit or look through your, because you might think you have written so well, but someone could give you one contribution or the other. So it's important to have someone look through you. Then another tip I could give is you should also be prompt in everything, but the whole, and equally read or follow all the instructions, because when ISS sends email, or when they on this on OKP requirements and everything, they put instructions. So follow these instructions. If you can make a checklist, that would be right. That would be nice. Just make a checklist of all the things that have been noted or have been stated there for you to follow. Is important to make sure that your motivation letter ticks off these boxes. This is a way to get your motivation, or get them go to motivation in properly done and focused. I don't know if I'm missing out anything, but I think if you have any questions, I'll be here to answer. But I think basically these are the main things you should look out for when you're preparing your motivation letter. And also let it have a link to what you're doing. It's actually one of the things, like you should look out, you should have a link to what you're doing or your profession, your current profession at the moment. So let's what you're going to talk about, and be realistic to your goal. I know everybody want to change the world, but you have to put in your action plan, has to be something realistic, objective, something actually attainable, possible to attain. So you should also not be so inspired to blow it over the roof. So keep it simple and realistic. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Chidibera. And indeed, of course, we all have plans to change the world, but be realistic in how you phrase it in your motivation. Eliana, may I now ask you to take the floor and introduce yourself and explain a bit on how you prepared for your application for the OKP scholarship?
Yes, thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Eliana Melhem, as previously Darren mentioned. I am a student here at ISS in development study. My master's focuses on social policy for development, SPD. And basically the social policy for development is the master's that focuses on studying the implementation of policies, but that study would be from analytical and critical perspective and the critical approach as well. I used to be an internal auditor in a local bank in Lebanon, and my bachelor degree was in business and management, which is a little bit different from what I'm doing right now. But that did not stop me from trying to find the link between my gained skills in either on the professional level or my education level, try to link them with my master's degree right now. The main link that was between my bachelor degree, my previous gained skills at work, and this master's was actually the policy implementation and the focus of the policy assessment, as well to criticize and to analyze the social policy. One of the main things that I would like to mention is while writing your motivation letter, since I was one of you guys and I was in your shoes, so I know how this process could be sometimes stressful for you, but believe me, whenever you're done with the whole process and hopefully you get granted the scholarship and you would be here, you would find out how much it was worth it every single minute spending on working on your application. When it comes in terms to the motivation letter or the action plan you're going to provide to the OKP scholar, either to the OKP scholarship or to the ISS application, it would be really great to focus on a few keywords and to use few keywords that would show the recruiter that you are familiar with the whole development sector and you are actually aware of what you want to do later on in this master's and your interest in the future and your career path orientations. For example, I'm going to share with you a few keywords just for the sake of helping you. For example, and definitely, as my colleagues previously mentioned, you have to check the embassy, Dutch embassy interest in your own country. And based on that, you would be able to write a really good motivation letter. For example, you could be focusing on sustainability, sustainable goal development goals, governance, gender equity, inequality, inclusion, exclusion of social policies, policy implementation, governance, growth, economic growth. So those keywords shouldn't be applied randomly, but actually should be linked and are based on what's your interest and the Dutch embassy interest in your own country as well. And believe me, this whole experience is quite interesting here. It's not only on the level of the academic and the literature experience, but it's also a culture exchange based experience, which is going to be really an added value for you and to your future plan in your life later on. And how I knew about ISS and the OKP scholarship was through one of a previous alumni, and she used to be my friend. And she informed me about this beautiful program that would allow anyone that would actually have ambitions and maybe participating in changing the world towards the better and towards the best. OKP scholarship is, let's say, your first step towards doing that. And try to be not stressed about it. I know it's a little bit difficult, but try to be on time and everything. Start on time with your motivation letter, with your application. Make sure that your motivation letter is being checked by someone else to make sure that you have different perspective regarding what you're writing about. And that's it. Try to enjoy the process because it's really worth it.
Thank you, Eliana. And may I urge you all to share the questions you might have in the chat environment, because we would be happy to answer them, either Els or myself, or otherwise one of the two students be happy to share more of their experiences. Darren, maybe you have had some questions already before the webinar started?
No, the questions are coming in and I have been answering them. I think all of you are unable to see it, but I'm able to see it. But that's completely fine. There are a lot of questions, but I have answered many of them already while listening to the presentation as well. So that's probably why a little bit slow with the slides. Now, the students would like to know, these are the questions that coming up repetitively, the questions about government statement and employer statement. They would like to know what are the difference between these two. And some of them says that the government statement takes some time to come. How do we circumvent this?
I think Els can explain a bit more about the government statement later on, but maybe if you would see the documents, you would see that it's a clear difference. The employer statement is really about the organization that you're working at, explaining what you're doing now and how you want to make use of the MA in development studies. And there are some boxes that have to be ticked and explanations that have to be given by the employer itself. The government statement is really a very official document which has to be signed and stamped, basically. Els, maybe you can say a bit more about how you deal with the government statements?
Yeah, well, basically, the government statement is done by the office or the body that needs to endorse your application on behalf of your country. And we have a very simple template that you can use or that can be used by the office that endorses your OKP application. But also the bodies that have to fill up these forms or have to make up this government statement are familiar with the OKP program. So they know perfectly well how this government statement looks like. And most of these bodies have their own template, but you can use the one that we can prefer. It's also on our website, but if you can't find it, we can also send you the template. So it's really very simple.
If I may add, for the government statement, I think it's country specific. So you have to check if your country requires you to have the government statements. But as for Nigeria, I know you do not need government statements. You only need the employer statements. And employer statements, I know most employers may not have the time to prepare that for you. So you just have to, like she said, there is a template and already templates for it. So you just have to fill in those things and give to your employer to then read through and sign. But if you're waiting for them to do it themselves, they may end up not doing it, and you would just hit the deadline and you would be able to make the application. So it's better to have the work done yourself and then pass it on to your employer or your HR, whoever is in charge for that, to read through and then sign.
There's one thing I may add. If you need to submit a government statement, the drop-down menu will open automatically if you fill in your nationality. So if your nationality is not on the list of government statements, the window doesn't open. So that's also one thing that you can think of.
Right. Thank you, Els and Chidibere and also Rika for that information. Now, there is a question about, hang on here. Yeah, so if the prospect is employed in an organization but doing consultancy work, does that mean that they qualify or disqualify from this scholarship? It's a bit vague of a question, but there are a few questions that ask about this. That means they are employed, but they're doing consultancy work as well.
I think indeed it depends on exactly your employer and the consultancy work that you are doing. If it's clearly related to the objectives of OKP, and it's a small organization, but it's maybe it's an NGO who is providing a consultancy or support to various organizations in your country. I can imagine that you would be eligible. If it's really large scale, then you would not be eligible. So what I would advise you is to submit the documents or maybe provide a link to your website, and then we can check on the website what type of organization it is and whether you will be eligible or not.
Thank you, Vika. There are questions from a few students from Indonesia about the OKP LPDP. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit about the OKP LPDP as well, and also about the age restriction?
Indeed, like in the previous year, there is an arrangement between LPDP, which is a national funding agency in Indonesia, and the OKP scholarship, where they decided to join forces and provide the OKP LPDP scholarship together. I would advise you to contact the NESO or the Dutch embassy in Indonesia for more information on the exact procedure. Last year we had a separate webinar for OKP LPDP, so they might organize that once again this year as well. You will have to apply for the scholarship also in the same Delta system, but you will be directed to a special Indonesia form to apply. So the rules are basically the same, but I would advise you to contact the NESO Indonesia for more information and details about the procedure and the planning.
All right. Thanks, Vika. Maybe it's a question for Els or Vika, maybe, I'm not sure, but there are a couple of students who do not have their passport available at the moment, but they have the national ID. Would that be enough to send in an application for now and get possibly get the invitation for the OKP to apply for it?
Well, the national ID is not valid for you if you want to apply for the OKP scholarship. So I advise you to apply for a passport as soon as possible, because it takes time to get this organized. And if you do not have a valid passport at the moment of our nomination to the OKP, to the NUFIC, then they might not accept your application. So I would advise you to do it as soon as possible.
Again, maybe for the admission, I'm not sure. Now, does the employer have to keep paying the salary? Oh.
Yeah, that's a question that always comes every year. And actually, when you will see the template of the employer statement, it is the first of the 6 points that your employer has to agree on. It says that, and I will read it from my screen, the candidate will continue to be paid a salary during the period for which the scholarship is awarded. So it doesn't have to specifically say the amount of your salary, but he has to agree on paying you a salary. And if your employer is willing, or your employer should agree on this requirement and have to sign for it as well at the bottom of that first page. So yes, it is obligatory.
Okay. And the OKP, did you already explain what does the OKP scholarship covers earlier?
No, the OKP is basically almost a full scholarship. It covers your tuition fee, it covers your costs, the accommodation, you get a monthly allowance from which you have to pay your rent and from which you have to pay your food, etc. The OKP scholarship also covers the visa costs and the flights. So those are the things that the OKP scholarship covers. And it is quite a substantial amount. And but it is also seen as complementary to the salary that you receive. So any costs that you may incur that are not covered by your scholarship, so if it's a bit higher that you have monthly, then you should be able to pay it from your salary. That's why the OKP requirement is that your employer has to pay a salary during your studies here at ISS.
And talking about visa, if they do not have a Dutch embassy in their country, they have to go to the nearest embassy, Dutch embassy, and that cost will not be covered.
No, I'm afraid not. Maybe Chidibere can say something about it, because I don't think there's a Dutch embassy in Nigeria.
Yes, there is no Dutch embassy in Nigeria, so we had to either go to Cotonou or Ghana to get our visas, and this is not covered by the OKP, so it's going to be on the applicant, so you should have that in mind. That is why you have to start on times, because we have to travel to the neighboring country for this visa, so you have to start on time so you can meet up with the whole deadline as resume same time with every other person.
Thank you, Chidibere. There is one question about what does it mean by own means for staff development? Maybe Vika or else can answer this.
Yes, in a larger organization have their own means for staff development. So the HR department or the personnel department of your organization might have special funds available to send you for training or workshops or what have you. So if you would be working for a larger organization or working for an international NGOs, in general, international NGOs have a budget for staff development. If they have to do so, like Care International, Save the Children, Oxfam, those kind of large international NGOs, they have their own means, and in those cases you will not be eligible for an OKP scholarship, unfortunately. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Vika. I think all the questions have been answered. There are a few more questions, but I think it has been answered earlier as well, but it's coming out now, I guess. Maybe for the students who's asking some of the questions at the moment, most of it has been answered earlier. You can have a look at the recording session that I'll be sending later today or tomorrow. But there are no new questions that I can see. So I don't know if Chidibere or Iliana, you have any last tips? Yeah,
I think someone is asking if they need to be employed to be able to be eligible for the OKP scholarship.
Okay, I think that answer was that question was answered earlier, but well, we can always answer them. Maybe Vika or else.
Yes, the answer is yes. You have to be employed because the objective of the program is to work on capacity building of the organization that you're working with. So you have to be working at an organization. I see also a question now in the chat: can one apply for 2 scholarships that may consider one's application if you don't get selected for OKP? I referred to applying to 2 different master programs and apply for OKP in 2 different universities. But of course, your application to OKP is not related to your application to any other scholarship program. That information is not connected to each other. So I would indeed advise you to apply for as many scholarship opportunities that you can think of, but only one application for the OKP.
Yeah, thank you, Vika. So everyone can see the questions, right? But I think most of the questions has somehow been answered in between the presentation earlier. And if not, can you all the students who are here, can you please send me an email at study@iss.nl, and I will answer them swiftly. Maybe I would like to check if Iliana or Chidibire, you have any last advice for the students, because they're going to submit the application soon, most of them at least.
Yes, I would like to tell them that to start on time, to not like waste their time in not being up to date in regarding everything. So the moment they always have to check their emails, their spam email, in order not to miss any update coming from OKP Scholarship Administration or ISS University Administration as well. And make sure that someone would read, would check their motivation letter, their action plan. And for example, even if they have a Dutch embassy in their country, for example, in Lebanon, we have an embassy in Dutch embassy in our country, but that did not stop me from starting on time the whole process and my whole process of application, because you never know what might happen with you during the whole process. So it's better to be prepared for everything and try to enjoy the process as much as possible, since like it's really worth it to go through the whole process, and hopefully see you next year here.
Okay, although this has been mentioned, I would like to add that you keep this in mind, that you cannot start and save the application. So this is why you have to keep all your documents ready and your motivation ready, because once you start the application, you have to finish it immediately. Like you have to finish it at once. You cannot save your application and come back to it. So that is important. Secondly, for people in Nigeria who have to go to either Cotonou or Ghana for their visa application, sometimes it's usually difficult to get appointment for this for visa. So when you go to their website to book appointments, you might not see dates available. You do not feel free to email the embassy. So do not just wait until you see appointments. You might get late. Email the embassy and request for an appointment. So it's usually easy to do. So you just write them an email and they will fix an appointment for you. Also, you should, lastly, I have something I wanted to say. I just didn't know how I forgot. Okay, I was going to say that you should also look at key instructions too. I've already mentioned that, but I think there was something I wanted to say, it skipped me somehow.
Maybe you remember later on, and please introduce or interrupt me if you can think of something else you want to say. So maybe I can refer you at the end of this webinar also to a Facebook group that we have for prospective students. And there are prospective students, but there are also current students in that Facebook group where you can ask people for advice and suggestions on how to prepare yourself for your application. Similarly, you can also contact current students or alumni via Darren for information and for suggestions, and please do so. And well, maybe as a last word from my side is that you will see that Els and I have the same background, which are the main stairs in the ISS building. And I don't know whether you checked already whether your own language of your country is there. In various languages, we welcome you to come to the ISS. So we really hope that your application will be successful and that you will manage to come to the ISS and see these stairs and of course us yourself. Thank you for participating in this webinar.
I think I just remembered. So I wanted to say that you should not feel shy to ask questions where you don't understand anything, any of the processes. Feel free to email the school because they are very responsive, very, very responsive. So once you have anything you don't understand about the requirements, the application process, feel free to email ISS and you'll get a response.
Yeah. I have just shared my, thank you, Chidibere, by the way. I have just shared my email address on the chat. So if you have any questions about the OKP process, please send me an email. If I could not answer them, I will promptly send it to the admission office, and Els or her colleagues will answer them in due time. So with that, thank you so much, Chibibire, Iliana, Els, and Vika, for your time in explaining what the OKP is about and the process of applying. I really hope that all the attendees have received good information and will be ready to apply for this OKP scholarship. And we all here at ISS, we really look forward to welcoming you in September 2023. And hopefully, and I'm quite sure you'll be also seeing Iliana and Chidibire, because you will have an overlap classes. So yeah, well, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Darren.
Thank you.
Have a nice
Thank you
day.
and goodbye.
Bye.
Okay, goodbye. Bye.